Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SimNFL show. Real talk about fake sports. I am your host and commissioner. You can call me Pierce. We have started a new league year. The 2027 offseason is underway, and we're going to keep you updated with all kinds of news and analysis here on the SimNFL show. So this week, we're going to start with our trade tracker, look at some trades that have already happened, and some of the implications for rosters and draft picks. We'll cover free agency. We're only just starting our syncs, but we got a couple of interesting battles to look forward to. We'll see who wins those bidding wars. And then our feature today is on overalls by position. Now that progressions have run their course and we have all the rosters and top free agents all progressed, I want to look at each position one by one, most of them at least, and we've charted out overall scores versus age, look at some of those trends and some of the players who are leading the charge in their respective age groups. Excited to get the new league year underway. Let's go ahead and get started. So first big trade of this offseason was the Chiefs adding another high overall player. Not content with having one of the highest overall quarterbacks and the highest overall receiver, Kansas City also traded for Chad Bruce, one of the highest overall players in the entire sim, 96 overall at age 31. They're sending the younger Andres Harrison, who's 77 overall, and their first round pick 2 years out from 2029 to Denver to bring Bruce to Kansas City. Bruce is in the final year of his current deal. It's mostly bonus, so that means that Bruce will play for pretty much nothing for Kansas City this year. But it's going to cost him the young Harrison, who has 2 cheap years left on his deal. Broncos will have to pay him a couple $1 million for the next 2 years. And then that first round pick. So it's an interesting case where Kansas City is getting a lot better, to be sure. They're going to have to figure out what to do with Bruce as he'll be 32 next year. So they'll have to figure out a new deal for him. And hopefully he's still on their roster by the time they actually pay the price for him in the form of that 2029 first-round pick. Kansas City clearly thinks their window is open, and I'm going to capitalize on that. Meanwhile, Denver is stockpiling picks for a potential future rebuild. Because with the 2 firsts from the Peter Lundgren trade, which we discussed last week, that means Denver now has another first. Well, they got back a first from 2028. I think they've already traded theirs, but now they have 3 first-round picks from 29. Theirs, Kansas City's, and Dallas's now. Kansas City wasn't done. The Chiefs also traded Michael Walker to New Orleans for a 2028 third-round pick. Walker is in the final year of his deal, so New Orleans' portion of that will only be $1 million. Walker, 78 overall receiver. Going to the Saints adding some new targets for Corey Landrum. I definitely like that move for them. And then Kansas City stockpiling picks, again, to potentially keep that window open as long as possible. Then we got a couple of player swaps between teams. Jacksonville is sending Brian Lynn to the Jets. Jets are moving Jason West. I was a little surprised when I did some research on this because West is not only higher overall and 3 years younger, but he's on a 4-year deal. So the Jets are going to take a bonus hit here in dead cap. I mean, it's not a huge deal by any means. It's not a blockbuster in terms of the cost. But they're going to pay 4 years of bonus now up front. And Jacksonville is going to get West on a very, very cheap 4-year deal. Meanwhile, Brian Lynn is 30 years old on the final year of his deal. So I don't know if that was, if outside linebacker was a big need for the Jets, or what the move was there. But Jacksonville getting a little younger on defense and getting a guy with a nice, very team-friendly deal for the next few years. Another player swap, New Orleans is sending Reginald Mabry to Washington. The Commander is sending a couple of older linemen, William Dew, who's a 75 overall, and then Jiaping Smith, who's a 77 overall. Smith also has dual position affinity there, so he can play almost anywhere on the line. So New Orleans first giving Landrum some offensive weapons and now shoring up their offensive line, so maybe he won't take as many sacks, and then moving Mabry to do so. Washington, meanwhile, can move away from some of their older players, which they have in excess. Mabry and Dew were both in their final year. Smith is another one that has 4 cheap years on his contract. So New Orleans can also benefit cap-wise from getting Smith on a very cheap deal. And especially getting a 31-year-old linebacker on a deal with now no bonus, since Washington is paying all of that in the form of dead cap. New Orleans gives a lot of leeway if Xiaoping should regress or even retire. Saints really won't be on the hook for pretty much any of that. And then Dew is 33, but on the last year of his deal. And then there was a big swap between Denver and Washington, with Denver sending Raymond Stelly and Danilo Shakir to Washington, along with 2 low fifths, a high sixth, and then 2 future sevenths. All of that getting packaged to Washington for essentially a defensive backfield. Randy Espino, Ronald Ibarra, Joel Evans, and Jeffy McBrayer. So 2 cornerbacks and 2 safeties. Basically, Randy Espino, and then 3 effectively, replacement level prime age players, but a lot of good depth for Denver. Again, moving some younger players and some picks to acquire some veterans, something we've seen them do before. I'm a little surprised that Washington is parting with Espino, given that he was basically a special teams cheat code, and they were pushing for him as an MVP candidate not 2 seasons ago. To part with him for 2 players and 5 low picks. A little surprising for me. Obviously, he is regressing. He's 31 years old. He's not 90 plus overall anymore. So maybe the writing's on the wall there. But now the AFC West gets to deal with Espino and all his shenanigans. So we will see what happens there. But yeah, a lot of assets moving between these two. Certainly neither of them unfamiliar to trades of this magnitude. So I suppose as far as reputations go, maybe not all that surprised. Then as far as free agency go, again, we've only just started having our first syncs, so no one's going to be signing as of the taping of this episode. But there are a couple of interesting things. First off, in terms of quarterbacks, we have a round robin going around with Denver making an offer to Aaron Poole at 35 years old, and then Philadelphia, who let Poole walk, making an offer to Cecilio Fuentes, which would be an in-division move after he left the Cowboys. Picking him up would be very salacious and could account for quite a few interesting stories this offseason. So we'll see if those two get any challenges. Of course, Dallas traded for Peter London from Denver, so now we have a closed loop between these 3, with London going to Dallas, Poole going to Denver, and then Fuentes potentially going to Philadelphia. An interesting QB round robin there. Again, we'll see if they get any, if anyone contests these 2 bids. And as far as contested free agents, we have a couple to look forward to. Elliot Grossman, formerly of the Cowboys, being courted by the Rams and the Jets. Free safety Robert Cook has offers from Green Bay and Jacksonville. Ryan Johnson, fullback / running back extraordinaire, traded to Denver and now released, getting offers from Cleveland and Kansas City. Jose Malera, the wide receiver, getting offers from Denver and Washington, who both do still have money somehow. And then Nelson McGarity, currently Buffalo and the New York Giants, both competing for his favor. So yeah, but maybe by next week's episode, we should be able to see where each of these signed and for how much. A bunch of other offers have been made, but in terms of storylines and contested offers, these are the ones I wanted to highlight so far. So our feature today, as I said, is overalls by position. So we're going to go through each position. We're going to look at broad spectrum of ages and overalls, and look at the kind of trajectory of some of the biggest names in our sim, the ones at the top and the ones on their way to the top. I am going to talk, I have some contract details we'll talk about. Next week we're going to do kind of our biggest dive onto the business side of the sim, biggest contracts, cap needs, cap casualties, things like that. But for now, we're mostly focused on overall, and then we'll talk some contract stuff a little bit, and then get into that next week. But starting, of course, with the quarterback position, we can see here the spread of quarterback overalls. Oh, I do also want to mention the gap at age 28. We do have a weird age gap between pool players and drafted players. All pool players started with age of 22 plus their years of experience. So the youngest pool players were 24 years old. And then the earliest drafted players didn't have any red shirts. They played 1 year and then immediately graduated and were drafted. So they were all 21 years old, joined the NFL at 22. So we had 22-year-old rookies and 24-year-old draft players. We had a gap at 23 for the first season. Now we're in the sixth season, 5 years later, so that gap is now at age 28. That's why there's no one there. As we progress in the league, that gap year will get older and older and eventually will become a relic and fade away. But if you're wondering why the weird gap between the dots in every chart, that's why. But anyway, on to quarterbacks. There are you can see, first off, the impact of the later prime age, as a lot of quarterbacks, even into their 30s, are still developing. So we get a nice high peak and a much more broad incline compared to some other positions. The first young dot that really stands out, of course, is Travis Neeble, who is high 70s overall at age 25, former number 1 overall pick with the Texans. So he definitely stands out within that drafted group. And of course, at this point, everyone knows Dakota Link, who's the highest rated overall for any drafted quarterback, breaking 80 after this most recent offseason. And then Asensio is just below him as well. Continuing up the line, as for younger pool players, we have Christian Sinnok. Oh, I forgot to mention, Neeble, of course, still on his rookie deal, which is substantial for a number 1 overall pick, but still. Then Link making about $13 million a year, 52 years for the next 4 is what he signed. Sinnok just signed a very big $64 million deal over the next 4 years, so $16 million a year. And then again, one of the youngest pool players, now age 29, in the high 80s. Got a nice big extension for the Vikings. See what he can do for them. Continuing up all the way to the peak, where currently we have Peter London and Dean Hammonds. London now being traded to the Cowboys. Dean Hammonds, of course, your 2-time league MVP with the Miami Dolphins. London is making $23 million over the next 2 years. Hammonds making $24 million over the next 2 years. So similar to Link, they're both in that kind of 12, 13 million a year range. With Sinnok, again, on his newest deal, unsurprisingly, the newest deal being the most expensive, being up there as well. Running back is a very different story, again, because of the very low prime age running back. We can see here pretty much dominated by younger players. Very few pool players left. We do have Hugh Kahn, who's playing this year on a franchise tag, making $7.4 million. But then he'll be 30 next year. Seems unlikely, at least to me, that he'll be getting a long-term deal. And you can see that there's the sharp drop-off there. There's very few pool players left at running back, given an average prime age of 27, I believe is what it is. And then as far on the younger side of things, we have Ryan Johnson, who, as we mentioned before, currently a free agent, getting a couple offers. Highest overall in the league, tied with Khan. And then on the younger side, we have Mitchell Reynolds at 25, Tremaine Craig at 24, Harrison Rodriguez at 23. So a large group of younger players set to take the lead by storm. We are going to get some running backs breaking 80. It's a bit low right now. Again, because of the way prime age works, we haven't had drafted players get all the way up to their prime. But yeah, these young guys are well on their way to doing that. And you can see a host of players behind them at pretty much all talent levels coming in as well. As far as wide receivers, obviously a lot more wide receivers in the league, a lot more dots to look at. There's a couple big outliers that you notice. The first big one, obviously, is Will Hubert of the Jets. Way higher than anyone else within 2 draft classes of him, in the mid-80s overall at age 24. So Jets have to be extremely excited about that. You can see, just looking at his trajectory, there's really no one else on that path. So he's gonna very quickly be at a level that we really haven't seen before, in terms of being a guy in the mid to high 90s, well before prime age. Unless he has terrible luck in that regard. The other big pool player to notice, you'll see just ahead of Will Huber, though he is 3 years older, is Andrew Richards. Richards famously was an A overall coming out in that very first draft class, and because of an AI college coach, had almost no stats. Raiders took a chance on him, and he quickly found a home in their pass-happy offense. Has done very well for himself, and then recently he's signed a $36 million deal over the next 4 years, so making about $9 million a year there. Is one of the top drafted wide receivers. But then up at the top, we have a trio of dots here representing our top three, which is Ellswick, Anthony Larry, and Richard McGuire. So McGuire just signed a 5-year deal for $48 million, so just short of 10 a year. Ellswick is making $24.5 million over the next 3 years with the Chiefs, and that's just the salary component. He got a new deal and then was traded. So yeah, just the salary portion of his is over $8 million a year. Again, fitting for the highest overall receiver in the sim. And then Anthony Larry, of course, been incredibly productive into his age 30 season. He has a very, very team-friendly deal. He's making $17 million over the next 3 years, so less than $6 a year. It's fully guaranteed, fully bonus. A relic from before we added average annual pay, and you can see why we did, because he's making less than $6 compared to other guys who are making 9, 8, 9, and 10. So still have some favorable contracts from that older system carrying through. Larry is one of those. But yeah, absolutely in that Rams air raid system, playing at the top of his game for sure. As far as tight end, there's two pretty distinct stories. Obviously, way up in the top right, you can see that's Jamie Ramirez, who the effects of prime age have really made quite a dichotomy here, with all the older tight ends going down, except for Ramirez, still going up 90 overall at age 31. But of course, the big story as far as tight ends are concerned are Don Scott and Romick Phelps, two young tight ends who are already top 5 at the position, only 26 years old, and only going to go up from here. Incredibly, all 3 of these players are on special 1-year deals. Ramirez got franchise tagged, so he's making $7.5 million this year on a 1-year deal. And then Scott and Phelps both signed, both teams picked up their 5th-year options. So Phelps is higher because he's a Pro Bowler, so he's making about $6.5 million this year. Don Scott a little over $5 million. Both of those numbers set to go way, way up when these guys get ready for their full extensions. Because top 5 players get the highest contract in the league at their position plus an extra like 10%, and they're going to be at an age where there's not much of a discount because of age, because they'll still be pre-prime. So yeah, expect big contracts for both of those guys coming up. And as you can see, other than Ramirez, there's really no one that parallels them in terms of the overall track that they're on. Moving now to the offensive line, a lot of data points here, which just makes it even more stark how much Christian Barraclough stands out. Way over there at 86 overall at age 24. Started as a guard, has moved to tackle now, which meant he should be making even more money. Just signed a 5-year deal for $53.6 million. And what's amazing with that is just how much of a deal that is. Less than $11 million a year for Barraclough to play almost through his prime. It's a fantastic deal. I mean, he's going to have a truly exorbitant fee when that contract is up, when he's 28. But the Saints don't have to worry about that now. They can just have one of the best tackles in the game anchoring their line for the next 5 years, which is great for them. The only drafted player that can even match him for overall, and despite being 3 years older, is Elijah Rader, the very first SimNFL draft pick ever. At that time, picked by the Bengals, now playing for the Texans. He also just got a very team-friendly deal, $44 million over 5 years. And then all the way up in the top corner, we can see currently led by Nelson Garcia, 95 overall. His deal, $43 million over the next 3 years. So over $14 million a year on average. But that's what you get when you're the best player, one of the most important positions in the game. The story at guard is not quite so interesting, especially now that Barraclaw moved over to tackle. We do have one data point that we can call out, which is Blake LaFell, who's a 79 overall at age 24. So with that high potential, again, another track that could be breaking new ground here in the next few years. He already has a secondary, so I can't move him to tackle. He's a guard center, so he can play anywhere on the interior of the offensive line. He's been playing as guard, so we list him here. And then up at the top, all the way, we have Ramon Diaz, who's 95 overall at age 30. Diaz making $55 million over the next 3 years. The sim loves guards. It loves to pay guards big money. And Diaz, one of the highest overall players in the sim, is certainly no exception. Center is similar in that there's basically one young name to really highlight and compare that to the absolute top. The young player in this case is Noah Prater, the Chiefs' first round pick for them, who's an 80 overall at age 26. So not quite the earth-shattering numbers of Barraclaw. Prater's done very well for himself and is on quite the upward trajectory. You can see just the whole slope of the line, and then Prater is just kind of above everyone. So we'll see where he ultimately ends up compared to our current top center, which is Anthony Helton, who's in the mid-90s at age 32, making $6 million a year for the next 3 years. That's all salary. This is another post-trade situation. So a good team-friendly deal there for presumably probably the rest of his career, as he'll be age 35 by the time this contract wears out. Moving over to the defensive side now, pretty strong, consistent slope, other than a bit of a dip in 26. The 27, or the very first draft, 2022, famously had a number of defensive ends who were highly regarded, and then all fell out of the first round, I believe, or maybe all but one. But the one from that class who has really distinguished himself is Michael Dyson, who just recently signed a $56 million deal for 4 years. So $14 million a year for Dyson, which has kind of been has kind of become the going rate for edge rushers now. So Dyson, the premier defensive end from the drafted players, leading that charge. And then you can see a trio of dots up at the top. That's Chad Bruce, Aaron Stokes, and Christoph Leatherman. Very similar vein here. Bruce on a bit of a discount. He was making $7 million in his final year with Denver. Again, that was mostly bonus, so Denver's going to cover most of that cost as he's been traded to Kansas City. But then Aaron Stokes, $28 million for the next 2 years, and then Leatherman in the final year of his contract making $14 million a year. So yeah, similar to Dyson, you can see, kind of $14 million is that price point that Stokes, Leatherman, and Dyson have all hit in terms of annual pay. So that's what it costs to have a top flight defensive end in the league today. Everybody take note. Yeah. So Dyson coming up strong at age 27, the rest all at 30 and over. As far as defensive tackle, there are a few outliers. The 2023 class, the second draft class, was known for being strong for defensive tackles. There was a bit of a glitch where their overalls were listed as being too high, but there's still a number of very excellent players coming out of that class, led by Alejandro Rua of Seattle, who is breaking 80 at age of 26. Always a great sign, always something you want from a top pick. Seattle decided to forego his fifth-year option and went straight to a long-term extension, which worked really well for them. $33.65 million over 5 years. So it's all fully guaranteed. That's how they got the value nice and high. But ultimately, it's less than $7 million a year for a 5-year deal, which is, I think, a great deal for them. So Rua leading the list of drafted players. And then they're up at the very top. We have Jeffrey Jesse and Robert Berry. So if you were trying to run the ball in the AFC North, sorry, that's not going to work because we have Jesse with the with the Ravens, and Barry with Steelers. As far as their deals, both in the last year of their deal, Jesse making 15 million and change this year, Barry just 6.8. So a nice deal there for Pittsburgh. All good things do have to come to an end, and Barry's contract is up at the end of this season, as is Jesse's. So we'll see what happens for them as they enter probably what will end up being the last contract of their careers. Meanwhile, Rua, again, just getting started, age 26, still on his rookie contract. As far as outside linebacker, there's a couple different peak points I want to mention. And the first one is actually Carlos Mateo. If you need to know how to find linebackers in the draft, ask the Seattle Seahawks. They've got it figured out. Mateo was a 4th-round pick, and you can just see by the location there on that chart just how much incredible value that is. So great job in Seattle finding Mateo. He's developed really nicely for them, 76 overall at age 25. But if you've been anywhere in this league other than under a rock in the last 5 years, you know that the premier outside linebacker as far as drafted players go was Mark Soto of Philadelphia. So yeah, certainly leading the charge there. He recently signed a 5-year deal worth more than $60 million. So $12 million a year for Soto to be an Eagle for a long, long time. I think both sides of the deal are very, very happy about that. And then as for the very, very peak, we have 3 names here. Obviously, if you're talking about outside linebackers, you have to mention Brandon Schroeder. Again, Seahawks pool player in this case, but still, what a pool player. Breaking 90, the only 90-plus overall outside linebacker. They got him on 3 more years for $38 million. So a hefty price, but certainly a good one for the best outside linebacker in the sim. And then Rodney LaBelle and Alton Bradfield in second, both of them high 80s at age 29. LaBelle's on the last year of his deal. It's $9 million, all salary, as part of that trade to the Patriots. So Pat's getting a bit of a discount there. And then Bradfield, $5.5 million for the next 2 years, also all salary. Again, part of that is the difference between Bradfield being an off-ball linebacker versus an edge rusher. They generally make less, can also sometimes generate fewer stats. So if you haven't heard of Bradfield compared to these other names or are astonished that he's making so much less, that's why. But still worthy of a mention alongside some of these other really big names. As far as inside linebackers go, there's one name you absolutely have to know, and that's Jehu Ginn, Joy of Man's Desire, tied for the highest overall among inside linebackers and 5 years younger than the man he's tied with. So again, 86 overall, age 27 from that first draft class. What's amazing from Ginn, he just signed a 3-year deal for $36 million for the Bears. And what's amazing is not that he's making $12 million a year. It's amazing that he signed for that cheap. Bears got a very, very team-friendly deal out of Ginn, a nice steep discount. So he's only making $12 million a year for the next 3 years. But that means by age 30, he'll be up for a new deal, and someone, the Bears or someone in this league, will be more than willing to pay hand over fist for him. But for now, it's the Bears who drafted him, it's the Bears who retained him, it's the Bears who get to enjoy his play on the field for the next 3 years. Though another name I want to mention, who is behind Ginn, but another incredible draft player, is Christian Carter. Carter was drafted as a 53 overall in the first round of the very first NFL draft. And even at that point, before boom bust, before all these other things, 53 seemed low to a lot of people for a first round pick. But Carter, in the intervening 5 years, has gone plus 29. He's the highest gaining player who has been in the league all the last 5 years. Plus 29. Seattle rewarded him with they're paying him $26.6 million over the next 4 years. So a nice deal for Carter. And then the only person who can get close to him in terms of development is Stephen Othon of the Cowboys. Othon was a 57 overall pool player, one of those second-year pool players we mentioned, who has since gone plus 28. So he's gone from 57 all the way to 85 in 5 years, thanks to 5 good progressions and camp. He's making just $6.5 million over the next 2 years. So Dallas got to him with a nice early contract back when contracts were a little lower. So a very, very, very friendly deal for them over the next 2 years as Othon plays for them. So that's kind of the big trio as far as inside linebackers go. Over at cornerback, a lot of dots to take in, but of course there is one that immediately stands out, and we all know who that is. That's RTM, Randy Tuioti Mariner. With 85 overall at age 24. He's got 97 man cover score and 97 speed. Just a couple years after being drafted. Absolutely incredible athlete for the Vikings. He's going to break just every record overall and pay probably, considering that Barraclaw was a UDFA and so played 2 years and then got his deal versus Mariner, who's going to be right at peak. Even if he gets a fifth-year option and all that stuff, it's going to be incredible to see what he can ask for and what the Vikings pay. Because even at a discount, it's going to be a lot. But anyway, so yeah, RTM, definitely the drafted player to watch. Yet another case of only one player previously drafted can even come close, and that's Amar Rodriguez. Rodriguez previously was the premier young cornerback in the NFL, and he still is one of them. 85 overall at age 27 is nothing to sneeze at. And Rodriguez making $11 million a year for the next 4 years. $44 million still left on that contract for the Cowboys. And then all the way at the very top, breaking 90 is, of course, Benedict DeLuna of the Chiefs, who's out there making $3.5 million this year somehow. Again, I think another recipient of back when contract rules were very friendly. Chiefs got him for cheap, and he's been able to grow through that. Now he's 90-some overall. I imagine he's going to want a little bit more than that to play for a team next year, whichever team that is. But right now, he's the only 90-plus overall corner in the league. Age 31, no signs of slowing down, Pro Bowl, all that good stuff. At free safety, this is one case where the most noticeable name is a pool player and not a drafted player, and that's all the way up at the top with Leonard Vaughn, who is far and away the highest overall free safety in the sim at this point, making a little over $20 million for the next 3 years. Eagles got a nice deal for him. And then the clear second place, a year younger and just a few points behind, is Jorge Mendez of Dallas, also in the NFC East. Mendez got a much more competitive, much bigger deal, $49 million for 5 years, so just short of $10 million a year to finish his career, presumably with the Dallas Cowboys. And then as far as drafted players go, there's 3 dots, which are clearly the premier up-and-comers. They actually represent 5 names, though, which is this cluster right here of Puello, Perez, Godwin Johnson, Jacob Carlin, and Ramon Fry. So all of them kind of bunched together around 80 overall, working their way toward prime age. So Carlin had his 5th-year option exercise, so he's playing on that right now. Ramon Fry, the team went straight for the extension, and they signed him up for just short of $40 million over the next 5 years. So $8 million a year for Fry. Puello and Johnson are getting in the $6 to $8 million range with long-term contracts. Perez at a bit of a discount compared to that. But yeah, you can see this very tight grouping of up-and-coming free safeties who are all, other than Carlin, who's working on his 5th-year option, all just getting their first veteran deals. So yeah, should be playing on that as they work their way into prime age and work their way up into being some of the top safeties in the league. And then strong safety, this one has one very strong pool player, as you can notice, already kind of breaking into the top 5 there, and that's Matt Bass, who I think doesn't get talked about enough as being a very high overall, very effective player, 84 at age 27. So yeah, far and away the best drafted strong safety that we have in the league. Just signed a deal for $10 million a year for 5 years, so a flat 50 over the course of 5 years for him. And then we have a trio of strong safeties up at the top, who are kind of our top overall. That's William Redmond, Jose Gomez Rodriguez, and Edwin Carter. Now Redmond is on a post-trade salary. He's making $6.5 million just in salary this year, and then his deal is up. He'll be 33, so it could be interesting to see what happens with him. And then Gomez Rodriguez and Carter are both free agents at this moment. Haven't gotten any bites yet. Maybe that's because of their age. But I think at this level, when you're looking at some of the top players at their position in the entire league, I feel like someone is going to take a run on that. Maybe later rather than sooner. But especially if their value starts to come down a little bit over time, I got to think that there's teams would be very happy for either of these guys to play with them. And then finally, we're going to look at kicker, which doesn't have anyone very impressive in the pool player range. You can see based on the slope, yeah, I guess they're going to get there over time. Nothing much to write home about now. Really, the biggest names are Michael Cox, who just signed an extension with Dallas, making him the highest paid kicker, $20 million and change over 5 years. But again, he's over 90 at age 29, and with the kicker prime age as high as it is, you got to figure, he can buy a couple homes in Dallas and be very comfortable there for a long time. And then you have that trio way up in the corner of David Genter, Rob Downing, and Jeffrey Leon. Leon making $11 million over the next 3 years. And Genter for Miami. And then Rob Downing, the big news there, of course, is another free agent. We'll see who wants a top-tier kicker and who is willing to pay for him. They're not super expensive, but, as we have seen, costs do add up over time. Thankfully, with kicking getting a bit of a buff in the sim engine last year, even these lower pool players are viable and have been making more kicks, which is good to see. We'll see what happens over time. Again, this is another very high prime age, so we expect a lot of drifting up and right as players age and continue to progress into their mid-30s. So that is it for overall by position. If you're a fan of punters or fullbacks, I apologize. I couldn't really find much interesting to talk about. David Ross is really good. We knew that. That's about it. So as far as my upcoming SimNFL shows, again, next week we're going to look a little bit deeper into contracts at like a team level. We might also spend some more time on individuals, like players in big contract years, so like upcoming big contracts, what we could see. But it's mostly going to be a team focus. We're going to look at cap space, current cap space versus what you need for draft picks, so teams that might be willing to add picks or need to move picks to sign their draft classes. Really, really heavy into the team side and the cap management side of the sim next week. We'll also sprinkle in pro days and combines as they come in over the next 2 weeks. And then, of course, the May 12th show is the last one before the draft. So we'll be all about draft stocks and team needs and seeing where we think certain players will go, who's been rising, who's been falling, what the question marks are. All draft all the time for that show. And then coming out of the draft the next week, of course, a recap and analysis for all the big stories. The big trades, the big rises and drops, the reaches. Won't have draft grades by that point, but we'll be happy to break down everything that happened on draft weekend. And then probably a short break for us, as I have some traveling to do, but we'll be back online before you know it. That is everything I have for this first 2027 edition of the SimNFL show. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching. And as I say to all users in all of our sims, good luck and have fun.